This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We're going to discuss an Iyun on Daf Mem Aleph. This is one of the Sugyas that's at the heart of Yevamos. The Gemara is discussing the following scenario. A woman was awaiting Yibum, and the prospective Yevam's brother, in the meanwhile, married the sister. Now, by marrying the sister, he's marrying Achois Zekukasai, but he's not living with her yet. He just did Kedushin to her, he didn't do Nesuin to her. And that causes him not to be able to consummate the marriage, because to consummate the marriage would be living with Achois Zekukasai. He already did Kedushin to Achois Zekukasai, but he cannot do Nesuin. Meanwhile, so originally this Yevama was mutter to the brother who married the sister. Then by marrying the sister, he put his ability to marry the Yevama in jeopardy. And then the Gemara says, what if his wife dies? So now, can he go back and marry the Yevama? Because the situation is Hutra v'nesra v'chazra v'hutra, right? That's the issue. So Gemara brought a few different opinions. The opinion of Rav and Rav Chanina, they say Mesa Ishtai Mutter B'Yevimtai. Rava says, what's the reason of Rav? To have a Yevama Shehutra V'Nesra V'Chazra V'Hutra Tachzar L'Te'er Rishon. Okay, that's all you need to know from the Gemara. This is different than regular Nesra. Regular Nesra, she starts off at the time of the Yibum, she was Aser. So at that time, there was no heter on the Eishes Ach. So even if, let's say for example, your wife's sister falls to you in Yibum, and after an hour or so, your wife dies, chas v'shalom. So the Yevama is still Aser in Yibum, because at the time that she fell, she was an Eishes Ach that had no heter. And once the Eishes Ach is not lifted, it cannot be lifted later. That's a classic case of Nesra. In this case, though, at the time the Yevama fell to you, she was mutter. Then you married the sister and made her Aser. Then your wife died. So the Gemara says that Rav holds she's mutter. So we're going to do a Rashba here again. I apologize that it came out great today. The Rashba asks, V'ika lamedak tuva, you could ask very well. You could ask a strong kasha. Since the Yevama was completely pater when you married the sister, how could Rav say in the Gemara that if the wife dies, you're allowed to marry the Yevama? And we even paskin like Rav. We also hold the nesuin mia doichen biyavama dechia gemura. We also paskin that if you were to do nesuin to the sister, it would push up the Yevama completely. Vehilkach im avar v'nasas ishtai. Therefore, if you went ahead and you married your wife, niftera Yevama v'halcha, the Yevama's pater, and she went and she could marry Lashuk. How's it possible? How could it be that the Yevama, who was pater, in other words, the Rashba seems to be saying, you see, in our Mishnah, the Mishnah says that the brother only did Kedushin to the sister. But the halacha would be, if the brother did Nesuin to the sister, if there was only one Yevama here, the Yevama would be Muteris Lashuk. So how could it be? Right, you hear the Raja is adding one detail here. The Raja is adding, if he would have done Nesuin, she could have gone Lashuk because there's no Zika whatsoever. So if that's the case, how's it possible after your wife dies, Tachser HaYevama Etzla Shekvar Niftara? The Yevama comes back to you. So it says the Raja, well, we only said she's mutter to you if you did Kedushin to the sister, not if you did Nesuin. Vim Taimar Deloy Amru Ela B'Mekadesh Esachoisa Shalai Nifter Adayin Lagamri. We only said it if you did Kedushin where she wasn't completely pater. In other words, if you did Nesuin Einachanami, that busts the Zika you have to the Yevama and you can't take her back. But here you only did Kedushin. Lohi. Dehala Rav Ein Hefresh Bein Nesuin Le'eresin Kida Amran. In Rav, there's no difference. Whether you did Kedushin or Nesuin, the Raj was assuming if you would have done Nesuin, you could take her back if your wife dies. Va'afilu l'didan nami mikol makom midaraisa mia niftara legamri. Umidrabanan hi detzricha chalitza. It's only rabbinic that you need chalitza in a case where you did Nesuin. Now, the Rashba did not yet say the nakuda of why you shouldn't be able to take her back. V'achar sheniftara devar Torah. Once midaraisa, the woman is pater from Yibum. Heich tachsar v'tesar zikasa aloi. How could she revert and the zika be asar to him? V'haksiv deracheha darchei noyam. This was the first Sugya in Yevamos, our first Iyun share on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, where there's a concept that once a woman is asar, she can't become mutter again. It's not darchei noyam to say that a woman was free and now she's tied down again. So the Rashi was asking, it's not right that this woman, at the time that you did Kedushin to her sister, she was not zakuk to you. Certainly if you did Nesuin, it seems like she could marry Lashuk. The Rashba says any requirement of Chalitza that perhaps we hold is required is only Midrabanan. And he feels this is not Darchei Noyam to say that after this woman was Asr to you, she becomes Mutter to you again. And therefore the Rashba has a very long Arichos. And let's cut to the chase. The Rashba says as follows. Therefore I need to say, this does not mean that if your wife dies, the Yevama is zakuk to you. She's not zakuk to you. You don't have to do chalitza to her. You don't have to do Yibum to her. Because after all, once upon a time, you were married to her sister. When we say that she's tachsar leheter, rishon ela mutter bilvad kamar. It's mutter. Kalaymer she'ilu ratza lisa isa eina asur alai. She's, if you want to marry her, she's not asur to you. She's not asur to you. There's no mitzvah of Yibum. In other words, if you live with her, there's no mitzvah of Yibum. I don't know, but perhaps you would not yarshin the Yavam's estate. The Mess's estate. All it means is you're allowed to marry her after your wife dies. So you say, where do we ever see such a thing that Eishes Ach, either Eishes Ach is a kares or is a chiyuv? But where do we ever have this middle ground that it just means that you're not mechuyev to marry her, but you're allowed to? Says the Rashba, the time of the Milsa, Mishum the Kivan de B'shas Nefila Hutralai, since at the time of Nefila she's mutter to him. How could that be? But she was your brother's wife. That means that the Eishes Ach was removed. I efshar le'asar ba mishum Eishes Ach. It is impossible to asar her because of Eishes Ach. Ukadekaimalan, as we paskin, hachoyletz liyavim toif du chalitza tiyavama beinhu, whether he ubein achim ein chayavin, you're not chayiv loya al chalutza kares, not on the chalutza kares, v'loya al tzara kares. Now the Raj is bringing a raya. We paskin like Rabbi Yochanan on Yudam and Beis that if you do give chalitza to your Yevama and then you live with her, you're not chayiv for living with her a kares, and you're not chayiv for living with the tzara kares. But why not? She's Eishes Ach, and you're not doing Yibum. So why are you not chayiv kares? The answer is, says the Rashba, once there's a heter on an Eishes Ach, the Eishes Ach is gone. So even if you're living with her in a non-Yibum context, because let's say Chalitza was done, so you're not doing Yibum anymore, there's no Zika, once Eishes Ach is removed, it's gone. Can't come back. Umehai Taima Rabbi Yochanan Parakama, that's what Rabbi Yochanan says in the first parak, De mi ika midi de me kara hutralai v'hashta koyala be'isra Eishesach b'karis. That's the logic of Rabbi Yochanan, that once you give chalitza, the karis is removed. V'hachanami here also. Kivan de b'shas nafila hutra, shuv I efshir l'mekim ala be'isra Eishesach. It's impossible to nail her for Eishesach. Ela de mishum de kidesh esach choisa. But because you did kedushin to the sister who did nifter alach, you're pater. you're pater to the Yibum. Therefore, so long as your wife's alive, koyala di Yevama, then your relationship with the Yevama is nailed with be'isar achos isha. V'hashta demesa ishta chazra yevimta la terarishain. So the Rashba says the only obstacle here was achos ishtai. There was no obstacle of eishas ach. The eishas ach was removed. The only obstacle is achos ishtai. V'im toimer, and if you're going to say mikal makom koyala b'la yivneh, so why don't you say, just like if you do chalitza to a woman, you can't marry her because there's a isser aseh of lo yivneh, so to speak. So why don't you say the same thing when it comes to this scenario where you didn't do Yibum initially and then she became achos ishtai, so to marry her you have lo yivneh? Lohi, d'lo yamrinu nachi ela kishanasa ba'isa bayis maisa. We only have a lav of lo yivneh if you do an act where you push her off with chalitza, so then you can't take her back because you get lo yivna. Or, sorry, it's cloudy here. If you do yibum to one woman, the tzara gets lo yivna. But when the yivama gets pushed off, memela b'kedushe achoisa, by marrying the sister, loy. Ela sheniftara mimenu v'nesra gam kein alav machmas hagoyrem. In this case, she was exempt from you, and she became usher from you because of a superimposed external isser of achas isha. When the goyrem is removed, batal isser, the isser is gone. So basically, the Rashba is saying that we've now, after learning 41 blot of Yevamos, encountered a new concept in Yibum. Until now, we thought when your brother's wife comes to you, she is a chiyuv kares, except in the specific scenario of Yibum where he died without children, and then you're mechuyev to marry her. And now the Rashba is saying there is a middle ground. There's something where this woman to you, you're not mechuyev to marry her. You don't even have to do chalitza to her, and yet you're allowed to marry her. What's the case? Where when she fell to you, she was mutter to you. That removed the eishasach. In the interim, you couldn't live with her because she was achos ishtai. Then your wife dies. Now you're allowed to live with her. Now, you don't have to give her if you don't want to live with her, you don't have to give chalitza. It sounds like she could marry l'shuk. How it's unbelievable. You could have a woman, she could marry l'shuk. She was married to your brother, and you could marry her. I mean, that's wild. And the Rashba brings the proof from Rabbi Yochanan's Shita on Yud Amud Beis, that Rabbi Yochanan holds if you give chalitza to a woman and then you want to marry her, you're allowed. There's no iser kares miika midi de meikari by haychaletz by haychaletz, and v'hashta koyala b'kares. That's the Shita Sarashba. As you could well imagine, there's a lot written in the Rosh Yeshivas to try to explain the Rashba. But just to hear the geder of the Rashba is a major accomplishment in Yevamos. I mean, it's not something you would uncover by learning Gemara Rashi, but it's really sort of the next level. This new geder of Yibum, where the eishas ach is removed, it never comes back, and there could be something that can interfere with the ability to capitalize on the Yibum, and when that's removed, there's a heter to live with her, and you're not mechuyev to, there's no zika, and it's sort of an in-between gather. The Ritva has a different mahalach over here. The Ritva, on the Gemara, Yiboilahu Meisa Ishtar Ma'ubi Vimtoi, Perosh Aresha Kai, it's going on the first part of the Mishnah, Diktani Meisa Yivimtai Mutter V'Ishtai, it says if your Yevama dies, you're allowed to marry the wife. Dahashta Askinan, now we're talking about Shemesa Ishtai B'Chaye Achiv, that the wife died in the lifetime of the brother. The Yevama was not pushed off from this house. And was not exempt to the marketplace. Okay, so it's talking about your wife died while your brother was alive. In other words, the Ritva says, what's the case where your wife died? It's talking about your wife died while your brother was still alive. You hear this? The Ritva is saying in a Kimta. According to the Rashba, what's the case? Your brother... the case was one brother died. And Reuven died. And Shimon married the Yevamos' sister. And then what happened? Umeis. What's the case of the Mishnah? The first case of the Mishnah was that you did chalitza to the Yevama. One brother did chalitza to the Yevama. Let's say Reuven died. Shimon does chalitza to the Yevama. And then the brother married the sister. And then the brother died. So it's chayletzes v'lay misyabemes. So in this case, what would the halacha be if Mesa Ishtai? So the Ritva learns Perish Areshakai. It says Mesa Yevimtai. If the Yevama dies, Mutter be'ishtai. Oh, this is going on when he says Reisha, it's going on the Reisha of the Seifa. In other words, let's say the Yevama dies. So the halacha is you can marry your wife. So it's talking about Mesa ishtai b'chaye achiv d'lo yedchaya Yevama mehai beisa v'lo niftar l'shuk. Here's the case. You have two brothers. One of them dies. She falls to Yibum let's say you have three brothers. One of them dies. She falls to Yibum, to these two brothers. One of them marries the sister. Meanwhile, the one that married the sister died. Now the shaila is, can he take back Achois Ishtai? Says the Ritva, you know what the case is? It's talking about even when you married the sister, there was another brother who she could have done Yibum to. So she was never outcast from this bias. Meaning the Ritva seems to be addressing, it's not Darchi Noyam to say that she wasn't Zakuk and now she's Zakuk again. The answer is she was Zakuk the whole time. Not to you, but at least to somebody. The Hashta Askin and Shemesa Ishtai Bechaye Achiv D'lo Yedchaya Yevama Mehai Beisav L'oi Niftar L'shuk. She was never exempted to the market. Ava B'Seifa Diktani Meis Hayavam Yoitzi Es Ishtai Beget. In the Seifa where it says, if the Yavam died, you divorce your wife with the get. So in the Sefer where it says, if the Yavam died, right, and in that case, the Yavam died and you're married to your wife, that case, we would not say Shemesa Ishta Yemoter B'Yevimtai. Why? Because since there was no other Yavam, the Hashta Leka Yamachrini Elahu, he's the only Yavam. Ki Nafla Kamei L'chud, when she fell before him, when the brother died, she was pushed off from him to aser her on him because of achazisha. Basically, the Ritva says that the whole shaila of the Gemara of Hutra of Nesa, Chazav Hutra, is only if in the interim there was another brother, so she's still stuck to the house. So it's not like we're saying no Zika, yes Zika. There was Zika the whole time, but if there was no other brother, then there's no way around. In other words, the Ritva doesn't subscribe to the Rashba's Lamdus, right? The Rashba's Lamdus is, look, the Eshesach was removed originally. The only problem was there's a Meniya of Achasisha, so when the Meniya is gone, you could marry her. Not that she's Zakuk, it's just she's Mutter. The Ritva doesn't subscribe to that. The Ritva says it's only permitted if there was another brother who she was able to go to in the interim. And I want to show you the Keren Oira. This may address some of the questions we had in the Mishnah. By the way, if you look back in the Mishnah said that Chalatz lo achiv oikansa yichnois es ishtay meis yavam yoitzias ishtay v'ger ve'ishas achiv b'chalitza. First of all, why do you have to divorce your wife? I thought you married her, and doesn't that cause that the sister is achos ishtay? I mean, achos ishtay is not zakuk to you. Why are you now allowed to consummate the marriage with the sister? And why do you have to give... in other words, what's the halacha? If the Yavam dies, you have to divorce your wife. Why do you have to divorce your wife? You're married to her. The fact you're married to her should push off the Eishes Achiv, and you should be allowed to stay with your wife, and you shouldn't have to give Chalitza to the Eishes Achiv. So it was brought up that maybe you have to give her Chalitza midrabanan. So look in the Keren Oira. The Rashba is very long over here. And the executive summary is in Menat Torah, there's no difference between Kedushin to Nesuin, and in both cases the Yevama is Pater. Except by Kedushin, Midrabana we say, wait until you do anything. If you hold Yesh Zika, why do you have to divorce your wife? It's only Midrabanan. And that's only by Kedushin. If you would have done Nesuin, the Yevama is Pater Lagamri, and you don't even need Chalitza. And the Rashba asks, according to the man the Amar, Mesa Ishtai Mutter B'Yevimtai, it's not Darchei Noyam, because the Yevama is Mutter L'Shuk. So how could she be Zakuk after she's Mutter L'Shuk? In other words, the Keren Oira learns that the Rashba's Kasha is, how could she be Zakuk after she was Mutter L'Shuk? That's only the case if you did Nesuin to the sister. If you did Kedushin to the sister, then we never said she's Muteres L'Shuk. And the din that a Meis Hayavam Yoitzi Ishtay Beget is only by Kiddush. But that's the Rashba's Kasha, it's not Darchei Noyam. And the Rashba answers, V'tiritz, when we say Mutter B'Yevimtai, you're not Zakuk, you're just Mutter, since at the time of Nefila she was Muteres Lai. So it's only a Mania, the Isra Eshesach is gone. And the Rashba compares it to Daf Yud Amud Beis, that if you do Chalitza, you're not Chayiv Kares if you live with that woman. Right? That's the Rashba in a nutshell. The Rashba says this is analogous to the case of Rabbi Yochanan, that if you give Chalitza to Yevama, you're not Chayiv Kares for living with her. So the Keren Oira has the following bamba. But Reish Lakish holds you are Chayiv Kares. Yeah, do you remember that? Reish Lakish on Daf Yud Amud Beis. Reish Lakish says, you're not chayiv on the chalutza kares because for you there's an aseh, but the achin are chayiv on the chalutza kares, and everyone's chayiv for the tzara kares. That's a shita of Reish Lakish. V'imkein Reish Lakish, the amar the chayiv al tzara kares hachanami aser b'yevimtai. According to Reish Lakish, that the ishasach doesn't just get removed. You would be aser in the Yevama. Kiven the ein kan mitzvah. There's no mitzvah. Then there's a kares. So then how could the Shas say Shmuel holds like Rabbi Lezer? What is the Shas saying that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Lezer? Even according to the Rabbanon, Shmuel could hold, right? Shmuel holds Asr b'Yevimtai. So why can't Shmuel hold like the Rabbanon? And Shmuel holds like Reish Lakish that you're chayiv on the tzara kares. That even though in the beginning you're mutter, but since there's no mitzvah, the Eishasach was never removed. In other words, why does the Gemara want to lock in Shmuel according to Rabbi Lezer? Shmuel could hold even like the Rabbanon. And Shmuel is going according to his reasoning, who holds like Reish Lakish, that you're chayiv on the tzara kares, that even though in the beginning you're mutter, nevertheless, the kares kicks in later. V'chanami hacha d'chayv mishum eishasach ki ve'in tkam mitzvah. V'lamalei lashas l'meimar aval hacha de'itzer afilu rabbana moida. Why does the Gemara have to come up with some svara why the Rabbanon would aser over here? Why can't they just say the Rabbanon would aser over here because it's shaloi b'makam mitzvah and you get an eishasach? You have to say that Shmuel holds Val karchach tzarch loimer the Shmuel sfira lei the chala lei iser eishasach afil mei kara. Shmuel has to hold the iser eishasach is chal even from the beginning. Di loy chayil, because if it's not chal, then afilu b'shosh shenesra mishum achos isha, even at the time that there's an iser achos isha, ein ale iser eishasach mishum demi kamidi mei kara shari alei. There's no eishasach. So then after she becomes mutter, why is there an iser eishasach? Meaning in the world of Shmuel, it's an Eishas Ach in the end. Why is there an Eishas Ach in the end? If there was no Eishas Ach in the beginning, there must have been an Eishas Ach in the beginning. So even when the Achosisha becomes mutter, the Eishas Ach should be here. So why didn't the Gemara say that Shmuel could even go like the Rabbanon? So let's see the Karanoira's Mahalach here. Valkein Nira, therefore would seem as follows: K'moshe kasavti la'el b'per ketzad. The chazra la'ter rishon legamri. When the Gemara says that if your wife dies, she's tafsa la'ter rishon, that means she reverts back to the original heter, and there's a mitzvah to do Yibum. There's a mitzvah to do Yibum. But the Rashba said, but if you did nisuin to her, to the sister, she could have gone and married Lashuk, and if she married Lashuk, how could a woman be mutaras Lashuk and then come back and be chayv in Yibum? V'imishum de'in zadar chenoyam? No, kfar kasavti la'el, dehad de niftara hayavama, oiloi, whether Yevamos pater or not, plukta achwiti. It's a completely different machlokes. Uvedairaisa pligi, they argue on Dairaisa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira sfirlei deloi niftar Yevama v'asurin l'asir l'shuk. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira holds that the Yevama is not pater and she's also to marry l'shuk. V'gam hu mechuyev l'garish, and he's also obligated to divorce u'lahoitzi asishta beget, and to divorce his wife with a get kedei l'kayem mitzvahs Yibum, in order to make the mitzvah of Yibum. Uv'chol gavna, and in all circumstances, bein bekidesh, bein benisa, l'Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira, tzarich lahoitzi ishta beget ve'ishes acha b'chalitza min ha-Torah. The Karanoira seems to say that whether the Yevama is pater when you do Kedushin or not, it's machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira says the Yevama is not pater, and she can't go Lashuk. In other words, it's not so certain, like the Rashba says, that if you do Nisuin to the sister, that the Zika is off to the Yevama, and that the Yevama can marry Lashuk. And it could be you're mechuyev to divorce and to moitz your wife with a get, to mekayim in the midst of Yibum. And in all circumstances, whether you do Kedushin or whether you do Nesuin according to Yehuda ben Meseira, you have to divorce your wife, and you have to divorce your brother's wife, you have to get rid of your brother with chalitza min ha-Torah. In other words, that which the Rashba says, that if you do Nesuin to the sister of a Yevama, the Yevama is mutaras linasei l'shuk, that is not pater, that is not pashat. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira is of the opinion that she is not mutaras linasei l'shuk, and your wife you really needed to divorce. Ayin b'toysefta the isa hasam shemeras yom shekidash achaz achoysa oy shekidshe hi atzma. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira oimrim le'hamtin ad sheyasa. That a woman waiting to do Yibum, that the brother married the sister, or she married herself, Rabbi Yehuda says, we tell her, wait. Mashma du adin de pligi b'neskadsha la'achar. that sounds like they argue if she would have married someone else. That according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, if let's say you married the sister, and then the Yevama marries someone else, could be she can't stay with him. So what's the upshot over here? Basically, we have the Rashba. The Rashba is of the opinion that when we say muteres linase, when Rav says meisa ishtai muter biyavimtai, it's only muter biyavimtai. However, there is no zika. The zika is off. Why is the zika off? Because it's not possible to have a scenario where you were zakuk, where you're muteres l'shuk, and then you should be zakuk again. And therefore the Rashba holds that you're mutter to this woman, but there's no din of Yibum to the woman. Where do we ever see such a thing? The Rashba proves it from Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan holds that if you give chalitza to a woman, then to the tzara or the brothers to that woman, there's no chiyuv kares. How could that be? She's an Eishesach, and there's no heter Yibum. The answer is once Eishesach goes away, even without a kiyum of Yibum, it stays away.
I mean, it fits better to the lashon of
Rav and Shmuel. The why muteres?
Because it says muter biyavimtai. If there was still a chiyuv of Yibum, then it should have said a mitzvah liyavim.
Right. Okay. The question, though, would be, and many Achronim ask this question, if the Rashba's understanding is only in the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. In other words, what do we see from Rabbi Yochanan? It's not the mitzvah of Yibum that pushes off Eishesach, it's the scenario of Yibum that pushes off the Eishesach. You don't have to actually do Yibum. V'harayo, even when Chalitza is done, the Eishesach is removed, so if the brothers live with the woman, there's no chiyuv kares. Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore we glean from Rabbi Yochanan, if the scenario of Yibum pushes off the Eishesach, in our situation also, since once upon a time there was a scenario of Yibum, even though that woman later became usher to you, she does not revert back to being an Eishesach. The question on the Rashba, and this is a question that the Karen Oira asks, is, wait a second, what would Reish Lakish hold? Why does Reish Lakish hold that when you do chalitza, there's still an Eishesach there? There's no mitzvah of Yibum to push off the Eishesach. So apparently Reish Lakish disagrees with this whole premise of the Rashba. In other words, the Rashba is saying it's not the mitzvah that pushes off the Eishesach, it's the scenario. So what does Reish Lakish say to that? So the Karen Oira and others, the Beis Meir says this, the Ber Chashmuel says this, Achiezer says this, that the Rashba holds that this is only true in Rabbi Yochanan, according to Reish Lakish, Ein Echanami, the Heter Eishesach is not the scenario of Yibum, it's Dechuya. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan holds Hutra, it's the scenario of Yibum matters, and Reish Lakish holds Dechuya, but only when you're doing the Yibum. That means Reish Lakish has to hold like Shmuel, that Meisa Ishtai Asura Biyavimtai. Rabbi Chanan has a mahalach to explain that that Reish Lakish agrees that it's the scenario of Yibum that matters the Eishesach. Even Reish Lakish agrees to the side of the Rashba that after Hutra, it's Hutra. So what does Reish Lakish hold? That once somebody did the chalitza, then lemafreya we say she was only zakuk to that one, and she was not zakuk to the other brothers. So the scenario of Yibum did not present itself regarding the other brothers. So regarding them, the Eishesach lemafreya always remained. Okay, Rabbi Isai. So this is the famous sugya of the Rashba, and Let's see if I could give you a Maramakim for Rabbi Chanan, because I did not see it inside. And here, it's in the Kavitz Ha'ara, Siman Tes Oy Zayin. I'll say it very quickly, and I'll let you go. He says, Muchach midivei Rashba gabi Yevamos shuch v'nes v'chaz v'huchik mashkasav l'el b'simen da'aroi so daite da'filu tizbatel hazika achar shehutra shah achas loy tachser le'isura v'ilu b'klayim b'tzitzis im tizbatel mitzvah tzitzis me'abeged vada yachser iser klayim l'mekoymoi. Okay, so I'm not sure how that is saying that Lemafreya, the Zika was only to that particular brother, but the Pashub Shad in the Rashba is that this only works out in the Lamdus of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Rabbi Isai, have a wonderful day. Be Matzliach. And tomorrow night, Bezos Hashem, Daf Membez. Okay, Kol Tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.